You are ready to get pregnant now, but hold your horses real quick and make sure you get these 3 tests done first. Hey, I'm Whitney, fertility dietitian and coach, and I help busy women get out of the Google spiral and get pregnant. I've helped hundreds of women figure out their fertility so they can grow the family of their dreams. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking about 3 tests that I think are important for every couple who is trying to conceive, or if you've already been in the conception game for a little while. As always, this video is meant for educational purposes only and not meant to be a replacement for medical advice. Before we get going into the testing details, I want to talk a little bit about the frustration that a lot of couples experience when they are in the conception space and getting extra testing. You might find that when you start to try to conceive and you're meeting with your general practitioner or your OBGYN, they might not run initial testing, and that's typically because their protocol isn't going to be changed by the testing results. So in many cases, most fertility journeys start out, well, naturally trying for a while, and then if you meet with your doctor, you might be put on Clomid or Letrozole, maybe trying a trigger shot injection or an IUI. Every clinic kind of does it different, but it typically starts with those 2 medications, Clomid and Letrozole. So you might find that your doctor starts prescribing before they start doing extra testing because those steps don't really change much, which is kind of frustrating. And in my world, testing is a very important first step because there are so many aspects that can impact your fertility. Too many, in fact, to address all at once. And so I believe in the test, don't guess kind of mantra because I like to have more direction when we're creating a plan to help zero in on where we need to spend our energy, our focus, our finances, so that you're not just throwing shit at the wall month after month. Let's talk about the first test that I recommend for every couple trying to conceive, and this is the male and female partners, and that is the thyroid. The thyroid is like the little gland that could. It's a teensy tiny little butterfly-shaped gland right at your throat, and this little sucker is responsible for your heat, your metabolism, your ovulation, adrenal health. It is closely tied to many different functions in the body, and since it's so closely tied to ovulation, it's important for egg quality as well. So when we talk about fertility, you're gonna hear me talk about thyroid all the time. I think thyroid testing is important for every human, but especially if you're in the conception space. Studies have shown that suboptimal or non-optimal thyroid function can increase the length of time it takes to conceive. It can increase your risk of miscarriage, increase your risk of developing a longer-term autoimmune disease. There are a lot of negative things that we can avoid if we get this checked early. Now, what to check is an entirely different conversation. I could probably have an entire video on this, and maybe someday I will, but I'm gonna keep it short today and let you know that most conventional providers typically only check what is called a TSH and a free T4. TSH stands for thyroid stimulating hormone, and free T4 is the inactive thyroid hormone that your thyroid gland produces. I consider the free T4 and the TSH test like the tip of the iceberg. Your TSH and free T4 can be quite normal for a while, and you can be dealing with a lot of underlying issues behind the scenes for years before you know, or before it shows up in your thyroid stimulating hormone or your free T4 levels. So what I would suggest is if you're pretty serious about conceiving and you wanna optimize your odds now, get a full thyroid panel. So this includes a thyroid stimulating hormone, free T4, free T3, reverse T3, thyroid peroxidase antibodies, and thyroglobulin antibodies. This will give you a clear picture in not only showing us if your brain is signaling to your thyroid gland properly, sorry if you can hear my dog, if your thyroid gland is producing enough thyroid hormone. It'll show us if your cells are converting that thyroid hormone into an active state, and it'll also show us if there's any underlying autoimmune issues that we need to be aware of. This can help give us a little bit more guidance in where your body needs some extra support. Now, once you have those results, it's important to find a provider who can interpret them properly and create a plan with you. So I strongly suggest working with a doctor who specializes in thyroid health, like an endocrinologist, or a holistic practitioner like myself, who knows quite a bit about the thyroid and can help guide you into creating a plan. My client, I always think about my client Anna when I start talking about thyroid health. She had thyroid labs done pretty early on in the conception process, and everything came back quote unquote normal. And she went about her life. She had done extra fertility testing. She had done more interventions, and it still wasn't happening. By the time she hired me, she was kind of at her wit's end as to what to do next. and I got a chance to look at her past thyroid labs, and there were some questions, some questionable values that were outside of the optimal range. And I think that's a really important thing to note. Normal does not always mean optimal for fertility. Remember, if you've seen any of my other videos, fertility is a luxury function in your system. And so we want to make sure your body is functioning optimally to devote more nutrients and energy into egg quality development, sex hormone production, and all of that good stuff. So when Anna had had labs done years ago, her thyroid levels were kind of normal, but they were not optimal for fertility. So we had her doctor redraw the lab work. We got a chance to look at it a little bit more closely, and we could see that she had a little bit of subclinical hypothyroidism, and it was impacting her cycles, and it was shortening her luteal phase in her monthly cycles. With her physician on board, we got that addressed, and 4 months later, she was able to get pregnant and successfully carry a healthy pregnancy and delivery. I'd love to know in the comments, have you had your thyroid checked? If so, let me know. I'd love to talk about it. All right, the second lab that I strongly suggest anybody who's trying to conceive gets done is a fasting insulin lab. Fasting insulin is one of my insulin in general is one of my favorite topics. And I'm gonna give you a brief overview of what it is. I won't get too sciencey on you because I think I'll probably put you to sleep. But insulin is a hormone that's secreted by your pancreas, and it helps balance your blood sugar. So after you eat, your glucose goes up, and your insulin helps manage that glucose and bring it back down. Problem that we're seeing more and more often nowadays, and this can be due to lifestyle, can be due to genetics, food intake, there are a lot of different factors, but we're seeing people have higher fasting insulin rates or higher circulating insulin levels. Studies have shown that higher circulating insulin levels have been linked to increased risk of loss, increased pregnancy complications like gestational diabetes, and studies have even shown that higher insulin levels can lengthen the time to conceive. And like I said at the very beginning of this video, I know you're ready to get pregnant sooner rather than later. If you're interested in getting your fasting insulin levels checked, just ask your doctor for a simple blood test, and it's just a fasting insulin reading. I prefer checking fasting insulin rather than fasting glucose or a hemoglobin A1C because you can have elevated elevated insulin levels for a long time before your blood sugar levels change or your hemoglobin A1C changes. So I like to go straight to the source and check your fasting insulin and go off of that data instead. All right, the third lab that I want you to check if you're ready to conceive is your vitamin D levels. I live in northern Indiana. We only get a good amount of vitamin D for 3 months out of the year. So low vitamin D levels, it's very chronic where I live. Research has shown that adequate vitamin D levels have been linked to not only getting pregnant faster, but helping you stay pregnant. In fact, there was a study where women with adequate vitamin D levels were 3 times more likely to get pregnant than their counterpart. So this is a conversation that's very important if you're trying to conceive. And a very important thing to check if you are living in North America. If you're ready to check your vitamin D levels, ask your doctor for a vitamin D 25OH. This is the most accurate test for vitamin D that we have available to us at this point, and it's important to ask for this test specifically versus another vitamin D test that might not be as sensitive. You'll notice that after I've gone through these 3 tests that there are some tests that are definitely missing from this list. Common fertility tests like anti-Müllerian hormone or AMH, luteinizing hormone or LH, follicular stimulating hormone or FSH. These are some common fertility tests that I do see a lot of, I'll say online companies marketing to test your fertility. I don't necessarily look at these off the bat because if those tests are funky, you're still gonna have to check these ones to figure out why they're funky. These are the first places that I start to figure out where we need to spend more energy and more focus. Rather than trying to do it all, I wanna help you do what you need to do. If you enjoyed these tips and wanna take that next step with your own personalized quick start fertility plan, head to the section below and take the Find Your Fertile Path quiz where I'll give you your own quick start plan so you can focus on the fun of baby making and not just the science. That is all we have for the video today. If you are a fellow food and fertility nerd, I encourage you to comment and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.